Hello everyone, this is the Skill Tracking and Development Project in the Agile Research Studio Special Interest Group in DTR, which is under the Delta Labs. I am Shankar Dutt Salwan, currently an undergraduate researcher in the lab, and I'm working on this project and I will present you the work I've done so far. So, brief introduction about the project. So, the project works on using a tool called the Weekly, and we focus on help seeking in a community to make sure that skill growth and development is uniform across and not skewed in any manners. And to make sure of this, we try to actively make sure the tool that we provide them is helping users identify all possible resources that are available to them to help grow in terms of skills and resolving blockers and issues they're facing. Um, so all the resources that we kind of are identifying here is learning modules students use in learning different concepts of human-computer interaction and user-centered design and research as well, along with people in the community who can help them with blockers they're facing. And thirdly, there are methods in the community that the community has to offer, such as signing up for office hours, sitting down with a mentor, asking on the Slack channel, and all these methods are an interaction of the learning module as well as the people. So it's a combination of two other resources, which is the third resource that we identify. And without further ado, I'd like to delve into the weekly and what the weekly holds. So this is the current weekly that we use. It has users are meant to identify their conceptual and practical blockers and kind of list a learning module that could help them with it. Along with it, they identify three people and three methods to help them. Current user obstacles I have identified over time is users find it difficult to, one, very obviously leverage all possible resources as they're fixated on using, depending on people within their SIG and SIG meaning the special interest group, along with people they know in the community. And there's a lot of skill that is unknown or unused in the community, which makes help seeking in terms of the community a very skewed aspect as it goes more towards grad students. Along with this, students find it difficult to identify their blockers, and this will be spoken about a little further in our need finding. So, the approach we have to tackling this problem is providing users an effective tool to be able to reflect on one, their blockers, and to be able to have information to validate skill sets in the community to identify all the resources that could help them overcome problems they're facing. So contributions I've had so far is I've conducted initial interviews to get a better idea of the weekly and how users interact with it. Secondly, I had conducted a status update study in which I had implemented a low fidelity prototype of what I'd like the scaffolds to be and a test on it to get user feedback. And the feedback will be touched upon later. So through the need finding process I had of initial interviews, I kind of realized that users found it difficult to identify their blockers. And in doing so, it was due to a lack of refreshment of the work done so far coming into studio. And this made it difficult for them to identify the blockers. Along with this, users also had a difficulty in identifying skill sets within a community. They'd be able to seek help by going to their SIG, but this was a little difficult for some people as they were not able to validate skills outside of their SIG. And if they were to reach out to anyone outside of their SIG, it'd be difficult for them to validate anyone unless they were given a referral. So the model we have to assist this process of help seeking in the community is to provide scaffolds to, one, help identify blockers through their sprint log, and secondly, having a scaffold of a guru list so that people can see user skill sets within the other user skill sets within the community as they're trying to identify a particular skill set that could help them overcome a problem they're facing. So this is a current storyboard of how we'd like the how we envision the problem to be and how users interact with the solution we have is as they come into studio, they begin to fill out the weekly and reflect on their blockers. As they reflect on their blockers, students use a toolbar that we've created that displays a summary of their sprint log, and through this, they're able to work on identifying their blocker. And after reflection, they work on identifying possible resources to help them. And the resources for learning modules, the scaffold there is the IPM, which is the individual progress map, which every student in DTR has. It's a list of all learning modules available and excerpts on what the contents are and distributed in different categories. Along with this, the scaffold for people to be identified is the guru list that we've spoken about earlier, which had self-assessed skills of people, like a bare minimum spreadsheet, to see where people are skilled or not. A paper prototype of how I envision the toolbar to be is this pulls up on the side of their weekly where they have a sprint summary with each story given in a numerical manner, the milestone that they have for it, and the goal that they want, and within three columns, a brief summary of it. And they can enter a week number to see all the stories and put it there. And when you click on each story, you're able to see more details of the tasks and whether they completed or not. Secondly, we have the guru list on the side, in which people are user able to identify an area and a skill that they need help in, and they get people who are skilled in that area. And the skill assessment is a model of self-assessment as well as validation, and the validation will be provided in forms of problems that the users, that the people who are listed have kind of worked on before. So users can kind of validate it through past experiences these other people have had in helping. As help seeking is a two-way process, we'd like for the person seeking help to be aware of how effective the effective help they can seek, and the person helping is also going to be efficient or in any form effective of providing any help. So coming back to the study we'd spoken about earlier in my contributions, we implemented a very low fidelity prototype of the sidebar by having links to a guru list as well as the sprint log for each individual weekly. And this we tested whether these scaffolds are effective in any way to help people identify the blockers and also identify people that could help them in any situation. The findings we had of this was people require external validation to select people. Along with this, resources can be overburdened. This finding was through seeing um, this weekly studio edition, through which we can see how many people are listed for help, and if they're listed more than a certain amount in the community, they're kind of given a red flag, yellow flag if it's kind of like medium, and green or no flag if they have minimum amount of help being sought. And also blocker identification for many users can be vague and not specific. Um, the implications we found out of this were that as help is sought mainly from many grad students and our mentor and our teacher, Hao Chi. This implies that there's a lot of the skew in help seeking towards a certain aspect of the community. So people tend to seek help in a higher manner rather than a lateral manner, and the lateral manner being with the help of other undergrads in the community. Instead, they go to people with more experience rather than seeing laterally how skills or how they could seek help there. Many times, new students are not able to well identify their blockers, can be vague or not relevant, and as a result, they're not able to effectively seek help in overcoming problems they have, and in doing so, they're not able to develop the right skill in a proper way. Along with this, students who also are currently in DTR are not able to well identify their blockers, as they believe that they know it before, but coming into studio, it is um, not very clear by them by stating the blocker that they have. Although while this might be an implication that I'd identified, there's also more interviews required to assess with these students whether they actually knew the details of the blockers, and when they're listed out in the user testing and the questionnaire I'd provided during my test, was it just out of sheer laziness that they didn't list it, or was it that they were not fully aware of what they're supposed to list? Next steps I've identified is being able to actually implement an interface for the paper prototype I have identified and take into account all the information I gathered from user testing about validation and identification of blockers. Along with this, being able to conduct more tests to see if the obstacles I've identified as my arguments are being made are actually being overcome or not. And if they're not being overcome, what could I change possibly? And also being able to research more on effective help seeking in communities to identify methods in which help seeking can be dispersed in any way rather than skewed completely. And this is a little bit of a tricky area as users are trying to seek help in the most efficient way possible, and most of the time it might be through going to higher up resources, and most of the time it's also that they find it a burden to go over their project again with a new person, and that's why it's a little difficult in a situation like this. But I would like to research more on any past work that's been done on help seeking in a community in any way, or help seeking just in general, to get a better idea of it. So the takeaways I have from this quarter of research so far is I need to be able to use more effective measures to be able to quantify results in any way, to be able to see how effective my scaffolds and identified methods are. Along with this, I need to collect more information to validate people's skill sets in the community, and this is extremely important as people are trying to identify skills that they can use from other people or how they can seek help from other people. They like to see validation of how they've helped other people in the past or things they've worked on, so that people have a familiar sense of who to reach out to or kind of build a rough framework around it. And along with this, I'd like to be able to build a basic interface to help facilitate all these characteristics I've identified and make sure that there's a proper quantifiable way to measure and assess everything I've done so far. And this is about it for all my work done in DTR this quarter. Thank you so much for listening, and that is it.